Today, Steve and I talk about money. What role has money played in our lives? How will it look for us in the future and years to come? What happens if we would get rich? How would that change our lives? What is our mentality towards money? And are we prepared to lose some, to gain some, to give it away? Are we thankful for money, or do we take it as a given? Do we feel entitled, or are we thinking of it as a mere means to an end? Um, how much do we know about the history of money and how central banks work? How is money misused, and how is money used wisely? What can we learn from the examples of others, and what do we want to tell our audience about money? These are topics of our today's discussion. Enjoy. So let's talk about money. Maybe you remember that. Yes, the dough, the cash, the what else?
Old school clams. What other term for money?
I can think of a lot more words in German than English. Anyway,
Cheddar. I think cheddar was
the
one.
cheddar. Okay.
Yeah.
The green.
Yeah, that's it.
Maybe you remember that a few weeks ago when I started, or months by now, I started talking to you about cryptocurrencies and how I'm having fun with trading them. I told you that I'm afraid of becoming rich. You know, not that it's going to happen anytime soon, but I told you that as I'm building wealth, I am afraid of what I might turn into.
Yeah.
And I think you sympathized with that because did you share the belief that rich people are evil, and if you become evil, if you become rich, then you might automatically turn evil?
Yeah. So I could talk about money and just power in general.
Mm-hmm.
I think that conversation. But yes, it's so easy when you get wealth to fall into the trap of I worked hard for this, it's mine, I did this. And that's fair enough to a degree. But so many people who get wealthy then look down on others who aren't because they think, oh, they're not working as hard, they're lazy or whatever, where that's a complete fallacy and complete lie, because someone working 3 jobs just to make ends meet, who have kids or whatever else, are completely different circumstances and maybe not as privileged as someone else who has made loads of money. Was it? Oh wait, hang on. Was it? I was talking about. Was it the Twitch streamer that I'd come across who was giving lots of praise to the Kardashians?
I don't remember that.
Was it you that I was talking about? No. Okay. Well, this was a fascinating thing where he was like, he was going off on one about how the Kardashians have, turned like 100 million. That previously, when they first started out, their parents had inherited or had made about 100 million from different things, and they've turned it into like 1 billion through TV show, through investment, through just being celebrities and fashion stuff and whatever else. And he was like, yeah, you can't fault them, for all the hard work they've put in, and because they've done what they've done. And I was just like, no, like if I had 100 million, I'm sure I could turn it into 1 billion pretty easy. If I have £10, it's a lot harder to turn £10 into, say, £1,000 than it is to turn 100 million into 1 billion, because you've already got that initial start.
Mm-hmm.
Having 100 million, it takes a lot less effort and grind and endurance and all sorts of those kind of words to actually make more money. And that's why the poor stay poor, because it's very hard for people who don't have money to, again, invest it, to put it into a scenario that makes them more money. Money breeds money. So the more money you have, the more money you can make. And I unfollowed him. I was like, you're an idiot. Like, I was just like, I get where you're coming from. I do understand where he's coming from, but it just really wound me up because so many people that are impoverished have it so much worse off.
Yeah, I didn't follow the Kardashians a lot, but from what I did see, uh, I was at least happy to see that all of the three older daughters are entrepreneurial.
Yeah,
They
they're smart.
they do put in work. I
Yeah.
don't like the things that they represent or sell. You know, a lot
Yes.
of it is beauty and fashion, which is okay, but I think they're quite excessive.
Well,
Um, and they're so influential. I mean, the one of them, I can't remember her name. If I read that when she promotes something on Twitter, just with one tweet, she will make millions. You know, if it's a good and popular product,
yeah.
because so many millions of people follow her and will just do what she does. And I think
Yeah. I
it's
guess
sad how influenceable. What's the word? How easy
influence.
people follow
Yeah.
celebrities, and I don't like the concept of celebrating um, people anyway, you know,
Yeah.
unless they're really humanists, I guess you could call them.
Yeah. It's a strange scenario that I've always been very confused with my whole life. But it's that kind of entrepreneurship is different than the kind of entrepreneurship that I want, because that entrepreneurship requires that, again, you talk about the product and what they're giving. To me, again, it's just my opinions and stuff, is very shallow, because again, it's a perfume or it's a fashion thing
Yeah,
that lasts. It's not a long lasting healthy, um whether spiritually healthy or physically healthy or whatever, mentally healthy, product. And it requires, again, poorer people to give their money to make rich people even richer.
yeah,
Like, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And if I was in their position, again, like we talked about right at the start, the fear is that would I become that person? Would I become someone who actually gets greedy and is quite happy to manipulate the masses
mm,
to give me their money because I like money, or if that's how I became? Because right now, couldn't care. But you don't know how you're going to be if you suddenly have lots of money.
yeah, right, right. But fortunately, doesn't happen suddenly, in my case at least. And
Yeah,
so I am working on, you know, the character traits that are necessary to treat it responsibly.
yes,
Um, one difference I've learned to make is, where does your money come from? What is the purpose of your business? And I got this the first time from the book by Alan Watts called The Science of Getting Rich, or something to that effect, which is, I think, 100 years old, but it's still very relevant. So the main thing I took away from that book was there are two kinds of rich people: those who exploit others to get their wealth. They take wealth from others. They will um, abuse them. They will, like you said, manipulate them. And the second is, you build up yourself by building up others. So you want to, and this is my goal. I want to empower others with my business, or with my dealings, with the
investments.
interaction.
Yeah,
Yeah, I want to have the kind of influence on people that shows them how they can get out of their predicament. And so before you can do that, you need some of your own life experience. And
yeah,
if you start out rich, then you will very likely skip that part, or
yeah,
take quite a while before you hit rock bottom, and realize that there's more to life than just making money, and you also need to work on your own personality. So one of the first rich people that I followed, that is, I read his books, was Robert Kiyosaki, and I think he's a pretty humble guy. He sometimes he makes a snide remark about other people, how they're too stupid to get rich themselves, but for the most part, he realizes that people have a head start when they inherit a lot of money. and that they feel entitled, and that they build this elite, or maybe even an elite class, you could say, where they think they should have access to everything that other people work for. For example, a university degree. I don't know if you heard about that story 1 or 2 years ago, where it came out that a lot of rich American kids just pay to get there, to get good grades,
Yeah.
and it got exposed. And so that was just one of many instances where you could see how rich people take shortcuts and
Yeah,
are
the
dishonest.
entitlement word. Yeah, the word entitlement is so on point. Like, because they do, they just feel that they deserve and um, should be given everything because they can pay for it. Like that's yeah, they think that they can do that. And again, not all, but again, that's just a way that a
Yeah,
lot of
there's a spectrum. I mean, the extreme
well,
is
in
I
all
am a superior race because I'm rich. I deserve this wealth, and people like that start wars and economic crises.
yes,
And you could call them eugenicists because they want to cleanse the earth of these dirty, poor people who don't contribute anything. They're
yeah,
better off in jail or dead.
and yeah, it's a fascinating thing that does happen. So it probably happens quite quickly, I think, to even a lot of people who come from humble backgrounds. I think because you get so used to having better clothing, better um how like housing, better stuff, and it makes you feel better. Well, it makes
Mhm.
you think that you're better. Like I came across someone, I won't name names, but a few years back, maybe they were all always this way, but they had been making quite a bit of money in their job and um, investments and whatever else. And they were originally, I felt when I first knew them, yeah, a humble, lovely person who had their quirks and their like attitudes that didn't seem necessarily in line with mine in terms of the as kind to people as maybe they could be, but they were still kind to people in general, um, and had good attitudes about um, poverty and money. And then I met them a few years later, and as I say, they had done really well, and they were just horrible. I
Mhm.
felt such different aura from them, or like attitude from them, where they were just talking about economics and the economy and um, this attitude that it's like, yeah, that we've talked about, where it's okay to prioritize money and wealth over a human life, basically. And I just made me feel ill. I felt ill for the person. I was just like, that's disgusting.
I fortunately have tons of literature that helps me, gain a healthy perspective of money and how to approach the subject. Uh, yeah, here's what I learned from Bob Proctor and many others. They say it's really important to be thankful for what you receive, because that will keep you in check, I guess. And also, the purpose of money is to use it for wisely. In itself, it doesn't have value. It shouldn't be hoarded. I
That's
mean, obviously, there is a purpose to saving. There is a purpose to investing, to multiply it, but you shouldn't be too greedy about it. And when there's an opportunity to help someone, you should take it, and not think that, oh, the more I help other people, the less there is for me. That is a mentality of lack and
yeah,
scarcity. You should, if you have a mentality of abundance, you will always be provided for. If you are prepared to give away for others' benefit, then you're in the right mindset, then you will always have enough. It might sound unscientific, it might sound mathematically unsound, and I'm not old enough and experienced enough to have
yeah,
proven this for myself at a large enough scale to say that I'm convinced of this myself, but I have read it from many experts.
yeah. Again, it's that attitude of abundance where you're um, again investing and providing in a positive way rather than a negative way, I guess. But like, we've talked again about kind of like the ethical side of, you know, doing right or wrong with money, but we touched on just then about the reality of wealth. And I am always fascinated by the fact that it doesn't exist. Like, it's not real.
Yes.
Like, it's just paper that represents a value that we give value to, or that somebody else gives value to. Like, it's all just a myth that we create.
It's true.
I'm always fascinated by that concept. It hurts my brain a little bit to try and understand it. But like, for example, and I watched this week, and this is a really weird example to use, but it's a very Stephen example to use. So, stumbled across this video on YouTube about Pokemon cards. Okay, now bear with me. Pokemon cards, they have change in value depending on who wants them. Now, this guy had bought the first edition box set from someone around the world, and he spent like $400,000 on it.
One card?
A box of first edition cards. It hasn't been opened, so it's been sealed when it's first been bought, and for 21 years it sat there. And inside are first edition cards. Some might be shiny, some might be like non-shinies, and they have different value depending on which card they are and which Pokemon they are, because that's what people put their the value on, which Pokemon it is. And he spent $400,000 on this. Opened it up, found a bunch of really cool cards that have really good value, and it was really exciting. Then he decided he wanted to buy every single box on the planet he could find. But what he had done is he had now placed a value of these boxes at 400,000 because no one else had spent that much money on them before.
Yeah.
Before that, they were like 20, 50, 100,000. But he himself had shot himself in the foot by putting new value on it. And he talks about this in the video where he's like, I did this to myself. And it's fascinating that, again, how easy it is to do that with something like a Pokemon card, and that has no value in itself. It's just a bit of card.
Yeah.
But people, being humans as we are, we put value on different things. And it's that they're putting value on the nostalgia of Pokemon, on the excitement of all this kind of stuff. And I guess maybe that's how stocks and shares work. I don't know, because I've never really understood how the stock market functions, because it's all, and economies. Because when the investors go, oh, the economy's on a downturn, that's when it becomes a downturn. If they had said, oh, it's fine, everything's going to be fine, it would be fine. And I don't understand how that's possible and why that happens.
You're talking about self-fulfilling prophecies, right?
Yeah, basically, with the economies, because a lot of the time, not always, obviously, but these days, a lot of it is actually because investors pull out or whatever, and they're worried that things are going to go bad, and that's why they go bad. And it just
it's complex. I don't want to try to explain it.
No, that's fine. But again, we don't need to explain it. But it just as me personally, as a everyday human being, just finds it very bizarre. And I try to understand it, but sometimes it's best for me to just go, okay, move on, Stephen, because it's like I'm dealing with real and non-real concepts that just, I don't understand.
I have studied the history of money a little bit. I don't understand everything about the history or about the stock market, but enough to get active myself. Not in the stock market, but in the cryptocurrencies, which are more accessible in the sense of doesn't matter how small of an investment you make. You don't have to be an accredited investor. All you need is a smartphone or a computer to get started. Yeah. You don't need a 10-digit sum or something before they even allow you to invest.
Yeah. Well, talk to me about how you got started then. Like, the cryptocurrency stuff is fascinating because it's potentially the way forward.
I'm not sure if there was one event, but I do remember distinctly deciding 2.5 years ago that I'm going to understand what money is. I had somehow realized that it's kind of like you just said there, it's real and not real and imaginary, and it depends on people's moods and decisions and what people are prepared to pay for something. And so slowly, I didn't spend a lot of time on this initially, but I started to listen to some YouTube videos. I started reading books. And I guess the first books I got into were Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then increasing your financial intelligence. No, increasing your financial IQ. And so he wasn't into cryptocurrency at that time, but the principles are the same. You need to know about the nature of money before you get into this, ideally anyway. It's
Yeah.
still surprising how many experts, like say brokers and traders, don't know the what the national money system is, or the international market, or the history of money.
Yeah.
And so let me just share one important insight. And I'll also make digital information products on this. I will be making some videos explaining about
No,
money and cryptocurrencies to ease people into the cryptocurrency market. I want to
that
encourage more people to get into it.
yeah. I want to get more involved, and I think that would be really helpful for me personally if you do that, and a
Yeah.
lot of people. I think
Okay, you'll be one of the first people I share it with then.
I appreciate that.
So about the origin of money, you've probably heard that precious metals like gold and silver have been used for millennia as what's it called, tender, legal tender, or I don't. That's probably a modern term. Just currency.
A value system, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and they still are. I'm now watching the prices of gold and silver because I'm told they might shoot up soon when the current monetary system and the stock market crash. And the real estate market is supposed to be crashing soon, and they're only being kept up artificially by printing new money all of the time.
Yeah.
But let's talk about America, since it has shaped the world in the last 200 years, or since its inception, really. Gold used to be something that you keep in a vault, or since it's unsafe to keep in your own possession, you might be robbed of it. So in the Middle Ages, no, sorry, before we get to America, in the Middle Ages, people didn't want to carry around their gold,
Yeah.
their riches, because it was too heavy and they could be robbed on the way or at home. So they kept it in a vault, in an institution which later became called a bank. And
Yeah.
the bank gave the rich person who left his gold there an IOU note, or some contract saying, this paper certifies that this gold belongs to you and you can pick it up anytime from our vault.
Yeah.
And that piece of paper became symbolic of money. It became so
Okay.
symbolic that in 1971, the link between the paper and the precious metal in the vault was cut.
Yeah.
And the paper itself became the money. And it became the bills that we know nowadays.
Is that the federal bank stuff? Is that?
No, I'm talking about everyday fivers and tenors.
Yeah.
Are the new version of the old IOUs that the gold vaults would hand out to you. And yes, it's important to talk about the Federal Reserve as well, or that's what the central bank in America is called. But every country has their own.
Wasn't it? I thought it was them that pushed for that to be changed. Is that? Am I mistaken?
In what way exactly?
Well, some institution pushed for the values to change because it basically benefited them. Where again, gold was no longer the actual value anymore.
That description could apply to several events.
Yeah.
Anyway, in the 30s, it was illegal for Americans to own gold. Was it the 30s? I'm not sure. And it got confiscated by the government. It got force bought by the government for a low price, and then the government just decided to set a new value for gold at quite a bit higher. I don't know the exact numbers. So that was really weird, but they needed to somehow bring back the stability into the economy and that was one way of doing it. I'm still sketchy on the details, as you can tell, but the big thing in 1971 was by Nixon when he said, you no longer have access to gold for your dollar bills. I don't know the exact wording on the bill before and after that, but a dollar bill used to be an IOU promising you that the government will hand you gold at the value of the bills that you give them. And so let's just say gold has value. That in itself is weird as well. But
Yeah.
and therefore, so if this piece of paper is tied to this amount of gold, then yes, I guess it has value. But if suddenly someone says, someone just decides for the entire nation and by extension for the world that that's no longer how bills work. Now the bills are just valuable in themselves, and you no longer have access to the gold that back then.
It gave them the license to print money, isn't
That's
it?
right.
That's how it's phrased.
That's right. And what happens when more money is introduced into the system?
Devalues it.
Yeah, because more dollars are chasing the same amount of products and services.
Yeah.
So all the money already in existence loses in value, and the new money that is counterfeit or artificial is supposed to have the same amount of value. So it means that anyone who had savings just got robbed. That's how I see the printing of money anyway.
Yeah.
And if the government actually used the new fake money for good things, then maybe I would be in favor of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But right now it's just robbing the wealth of the people who actually work to create value of their labor and savings. And then so that the new money suddenly has a part of that value and can be used for wars or to bail out banks who did stupid things with your savings.
Yeah. Who should be the ones being punished, but they're not. They're the ones being helped. It's bizarre.
Right. Yeah, you should see whenever the American central bank prints trillions of new dollars, where that money actually goes to. Yes, people might get $120 checks in the mail, but that's a pittance, that's pennies. Yeah, and the rich get a lot richer because even though you might get dollars, you're not getting new value. You know, they're giving you less than they're taking from you. It's just that most people don't have enough financial education, and some even claim that this is not taught at universities on purpose, so that people stay ignorant of how money works, so that they can be exploited better.
Well, yeah, like it's a constant joke is that we went to high school, we went to university, and people still don't know how to do their taxes or how things like basic stuff like a mortgage. Everyone's supposed to have a mortgage at some point. That's life. You get a house and have to get a mortgage. I don't know how that works. Like, and then all the friends I've had who've got mortgages are just like, we never got taught this stuff and how this works.
Yeah.
Like,
and they end up trapped.
It's fascinating. Yeah, it's fascinating. But like, looping it around a little bit, discussion, and that's I guess why you want to learn about money and why I have ideas myself of how to live outside or within the system, but create our own system within the system. So you are investing in, and working in cryptocurrency. You've researched about how money works to therefore learn how to use it wisely and help you not fall into the same trap, I guess.
Right. Yeah. I don't want to end up being exploited or becoming a wage slave. That's a term that's old, but you don't hear it a lot anymore. People who did research this, I don't know, 50 years ago or 100 years ago even, came up with the term because when you're a regular employee, you pay almost half of what you get in taxes to fund things that you're not really in favor of.
Yeah.
There are various ways how you can be exploited. And so I have become self-employed. I registered for that nearly a year ago, I think. I haven't done a lot of business. Don't have business partners or anything. I'm still learning.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be taken advantage of. I want to use money for good things, like we said, to help people in need, to empower people. I want to help educate people so that they will not be enslaved either.
Yeah.
And yes, I support the new technology that is attempting, it's not perfect, but it's attempting to build something next to the current monetary system, not to attack it really. You know,
No.
I am not interested in voting in people, you know, or changing politicians' minds
Yeah.
to legislate something that actually makes sense for people monetarily. I want something new to be built, and then everyone, once they see how great it is, will flock to it, and the current system will collapse because it needs everyone to comply and to give away their money, basically, or
Yeah.
give away their labor, their life, their energy. I want people to savor those things and to use them for good. So many people hate their jobs, don't even
Yeah.
see any value in what they're
Yep.
doing.
Yep.
So that is a sad state. And yes, a lot of it comes from ignorance, but also just being exploited.
Yeah. Well,
We
it's the system, isn't it? It's the matrix. As you know, it's so difficult to rise above and break free of the chains. Like as I talked about at the start, where again, turning £10 into £1,000 is a lot harder than turning a million into a billion. Like, sorry, 100 million into a billion. It's and they keep us there. You know, it's so difficult, but it's possible. It is possible to
to
find
escape.
ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So one
To get
thing
some,
I
and
don't
it's
know.
freedom, isn't it? Sorry, go on.
That's right. That's right. Financial freedom is something I want for myself and for everyone. And I believe financial intelligence is necessary. It's not the only thing you need. Obviously, you need opportunity. You need people to actually do business with, but
Yeah.
you should never try to exploit others in order to elevate yourself.
Yeah.
Uh, what was I saying? Oh, right. There are so many new opportunities, and the one I wrote you about yesterday that I'm still looking into myself is gaming. Uh,
Yes.
there is a
Interesting.
game on the Engine blockchain called Lost Relics. And I've had the desire in the back of my mind for several years now to go back and play Diablo. I played Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction when I was a teenager and loved it. And this game is apparently a lot like it. And I read something about people earning $17 per hour who play it. I don't know exactly if
Okay.
there's a steady income or if it's, I think it's rather that you um, earn, you discover, you
Yeah.
accrue rare objects that you can sell. I think that's how they make money. I still need to learn more about it. But I thought since you spend a lot of time, well, I imagine you spend a lot of time gaming, maybe that would be something for you.
Yeah.
And it's not a
Relatively.
lot, but it could be something like if that's how you spend your time anyway, you might as well be making money.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what Twitch has provided for a lot of people
Mhm.
and YouTube, where it's like they gamed anyway, and now they game by and earn money with viewership.
But
Whereas this,
Twitch was bought by Amazon
yeah,
maybe 2 years ago. And do you know the numbers? Do they keep maybe 30% of all the
I've no,
income?
I've no idea.
So again, I think that people are being kind of exploited. Yes, they're happy that
Yeah.
they can do something they enjoy for an income. It's still a lot less than it could be though. And so there again, for streaming your games, there are alternatives. I hear that the platform Float, flote.app, will have a streaming video service. It's still in the very early stages. I am putting up my videos since
Yeah.
last week on odyssey.com,
Okay.
and that will bring in a few cents. But
But you know what? There seems to be a cycle though. So like, there seems to be a cycle of these things where it starts off cheaper and easier. So like, you had YouTube, it was a good place to put videos and whatever else, and then and then Twitch comes along and it starts off better for the user, like the streamer. Like it's seen as a better place to be as a gaming streamer or whatever. And then over time, the privilege to use the platform of say Twitch becomes more expensive because it becomes more popular and they can make more money. And I'm always fascinated by that. And then eventually something else will come along and replace that by being provide more for the streamer or whatever. And then the same cycle keeps kind of happening every sort of like 10 years, I think, at the moment. Because again, YouTube was around for a long time. It's still around, obviously. But for like streaming, Twitch, I think it's been around for about 5 years, maybe.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
But
yeah, I know what you mean. Those systems get co-opted.
Yeah.
Like Google's motto is no longer "do no evil," like it used to be.
That's really funny. But like Amazon buys it. People buy things up. The big companies absorb them.
Right.
And it's always fascinating because I always wonder what the original investors then do afterwards, or the original creators then do. So, kind of a moral ethic chat where it's like, well, if you sell your company for $1 billion or whatever, or several billion, do you like to a bigger company like Amazon or Disney or whatever? If you then invest that money back in to help other people, is that okay? Like it's what becomes the where do you draw the line between selling out inverted commas and trying to help people? Is that okay or not? I guess it's all individual, really, isn't it? But
yeah, I think I also grew up with the belief that money is dirty, and it leads to bad things, but it doesn't have to be.
No.
But again, it takes vigilance, education to make sure that that doesn't happen, and just staying in touch with everyday people. Not sacrificing your friendships for it, for example.
That's yeah.
When your friends start saying things like, "Oh, you've changed," then it's time to look in the mirror and reevaluate priorities.
Yeah.
Because yes, you can do a lot about it. Like I hear, so I'm single, but there's something I want to be careful about once I become a husband and a father, and that is, so I was warned by this already when I was a teenager, that a lot of fathers and husbands put more and more time into their jobs, and it's for various reasons, maybe because they feel not appreciated enough, and they want to make more monies to feel more valuable, or something like that is often the reason, and they're not aware of it so much. And
also, it's hard. They have to feel like they have to keep providing more and more for their family often, and they get lost in that concept of not actually providing the fatherly care.
Right.
And so they get the value from, oh, I just got my kids the latest iPad or whatever because I'm working harder and working more. So I need to work more to then provide better things for them. And it's again the intrinsic things rather than the actual parenting and time with the child.
You build up this wrong value system where you think you're actually doing it for them, but that's not what they want. I mean, yes, you need money to survive, and you need to provide for your family, for them to survive, but it's important to, I guess, interview them, or to have an inventory every so often to see whether you're actually meeting all the other needs as well.
Yeah, if they're happy and becoming well-rounded individuals and not spoiled little brats. Like, because it's so easy to do. Because again, you can give them all these things and them still be happy, well-rounded people. But if you're not around, if these products them, again, we're kind of talking from the other side of the fence where we don't actually have kids or anything.
Yeah.
But, you can observe enough as a human being to make these comments. Because some people would be like, "Oh, you don't have kids, you don't know what you're talking about."
Right.
And it's like,
yeah, it's not from experience. It's something. It's advice that has been passed on to me from others.
those that have. Yeah,
that I keep in the back of my mind for the day that it does apply to me, so that I
yeah,
don't fall into that trap.
yeah, yep. Because that's, to us as individuals, that's what's most important. That's what we value. Um, is, again, having a good relationship with potential children and other individuals. And
Yeah, I invest in my future by
yeah,
preparing for it, not just financially, but also these, trying to gain some wisdom, not just from making mistakes, but also from the advice from others. I think that's valuable.
yes.
We try to pass on advice in this podcast, even though we don't have that much, life experience ourselves.
Well, we don't have tangible life experience. We don't, like, we don't have, again, we're not rich. We can't on paper write it down and be like, hey, this is the evidence of our success, as it were. But we could write down all the experiences we've had that has given us wisdom. And wisdom, in my opinion, is far more valuable than, again, being able to buy someone a car, for example.
Right.
And it allows to give you money, gives you experiences, or having the freedom to give you experiences, because obviously that costs
That's
to go
true.
to places. Obviously, we're in a pandemic, so therefore we can't, do things. But money gives, in its current form, gives freedom, doesn't it? So
That's true. And I
unfortunately, it shouldn't. But
let's also talk about debt. When I was 15 or so, I bought a PlayStation and went into debt for that. That wasn't on a bank account, fortunately, but with the account I had with my father. He
yeah,
he was a bank for us children.
yeah,
It gave us generous interest. And for my sisters, they didn't take so much advantage of it. They weren't as good at saving as I was. And so I got good interest, but I also overdrew once to buy a PlayStation, and that was the only time I've ever been in debt.
yeah,
But it must be like a prison when you can barely pay the monthly interest or yearly interest, and you wonder whether you're ever going to be free of it if you don't
yeah,
see, radical changes in your job life,
yeah.
or whatever income you have.
The psychology behind that is interesting because am in debt. I've got a fair amount of debt, and for years would worry about it and feel like it's a prison and wonder how I'm going to get out of this and whatever else. But that's because I was worried about more, I guess. So I was like, okay, how do I get out of this so I can then get a bigger flat or a car again or whatever? How do I get out of this so I can then provide or get to more things? It traps you in that respect. It traps you that you can't, again, have the freedom to go on holiday or to go do other things because that money has to go on paying off the debts. And that would depress me a lot. It wasn't until I got to the point where I was like, actually, I can provide food on the table. I can, and some people can't when they're in debt, so that's fair enough. But as an individual, granted, it's not the best quality food; it's the cheapest I can find. But and I've got, I can have warm showers, and I can treat myself to a computer game every so often. That's my luxury. Or go out with friends and stuff. Then once I started thinking in those respects, it didn't no longer felt like a prison. It no longer felt like I no longer worried about it. At some point, it will sort itself out. I'm being as proactive as I can be in my circumstances to get rid of it. Because, like you, I had a family member who was my bank. So, but I wasn't as sensible as you. I would withdraw quite often because I would find something that I wanted that was nice and flashy, and then just be like, "Hey, so and so, can I borrow this amount of money to get this, and I'll pay you back later?" And they were incredible. They were always like, "Yeah, sure." And because they knew I would pay them back, like that was the thing. I've always paid them back. Again, with extra on top quite often, just to kind of be like, "Hey, thanks," kind of stuff. And when I got ill and couldn't earn the money to pay back to them, I felt really bad. I was like,
Mhm.
okay, rubbish. So then I started I managed to finally last year pay that person back, and it felt amazing to be able to do that. Um, but the current debt I have isn't going anywhere. I'm lucky that it's not going to suddenly bailiffs are going to come to my door and take all my stuff. I guess that's different because that happens to a lot of people where
Yeah.
it is that bad. I'm talking about a couple of thousand here, whereas a lot of people get into 20, 30, 40,000 pounds worth of debt. So
Yeah.
that's the typical debt these days, I think, within at least Britain anyway. Um, so my debt is minimal compared to a lot of people's. But when my attitude changed, I felt free and happy. I still do my best to pay it off, but it was the mental perspective because I can't change it. I cannot wave a wand and do this. I can do my best, but
No, it's amazing that you've been able to stem that weight. A
yeah,
lot of people suffer mentally, their mental
yeah,
health declines because
yeah,
they feel constantly crushed.
yeah.
And if
It's horrible.
the, it reminds me of some of the webinars that I watch by billionaire, not millionaires, giving investment advice, for example. And and obviously I don't just follow any millionaire, but those that I look up to. Um, and it's amazing to hear them talk similarly to that. And I remember one saying, I care about helping people have a full fridge. That
Yeah,
I don't care about like how many rich clients I have. That's nice. And I do work with rich people and big companies, but I have founded this company, Market Peak it's called, um, to help as many people as possible to put food on the table and to not be a slave.
yeah.
And I thought, wow, that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
the relationship I want to have with money.
That's
And
the dream, isn't it? That's the dream.
so it's possible to to do more with less through cryptocurrency. I am very hopeful for the technology because it is more decentralized than current systems. You don't have to trust people as much. You don't have to like give them all your money and hope that you'll get it back and that they'll actually do what they say. Um, Yesterday I was trying to explain decentralization to my mother, and I said, it's like a presidential candidate who actually does what he says, which
Yeah,
never happens in reality. But like I was trying to tell her, why do we still need a person to be a leader at an organization or a country when we can trust a program so much more? And that's how blockchain works. Like it's like a law or a rule. A program is like a rule book that runs itself, and no one can stop it from running. It's
yeah,
not dependent on any weak, corrupt person that you can bribe.
yeah,
It actually just does what it's supposed to because it's not a person, and everyone knows what it does because the code is open source. Obviously, not everyone can understand the code, but if you wanted to, you could look at it and you can check and all the transparency of the transactions. So that's why I'm hopeful that this new system will be a paradigm shift.
yeah.
Uh,
It levels the playing field. It levels the playing field
right.
because again, as you talk about again, the corruption that can happen and has happened and does happen every day at the higher levels. Like the prime example recently is it GameStop or
Yeah.
GameShop, whatever it's called,
The
where
GameStop stock. Yeah.
yeah, that's the prime example of how corrupt it all is. It's like the lesser down people invest together, make a bunch of money, and get told they can't because they're like, oh, it's not the way you should do these things. But yet the higher up people with hedge funds can do it all the time.
Right.
Like it's nuts. Like they're allowed to do it all the time. But if the common people do it, then no, you can't do that. That's illegal. And that's wrong. And it's like that's
They're,
just
they're
it's just
trying to
sick.
protect us from our own ignorance or fallibility, or they don't want us to become gambling addicts. I've heard lots of different excuses for why the small person shouldn't become a retail investor.
And you know what? One of those people that on Reddit, that group that got all the lots of money from it, from the scenario.
Bets is the group. Yeah.
Yeah. They, you know what? They bought Nintendo Switches for a children's hospital. So all these kids that are pretty much dying and need some entertainment in their lives before they pass on, he spent a fortune to do it because he wanted to give those kids some happiness in their lives and some positivity. And I'm just like this, yeah. And then you've got these people higher up that are just like, no, we're going to take away this money that you've got that you're using for good because how dare you? You know, it's shocking, absolutely shocking.
Yeah, it's crazy just to see how much potential humans actually have and how much they squander it because of, like I said in the beginning, there's a spectrum of just evil, I guess you could say, or at least like false beliefs about money.
Yeah.
Like I personally believe that there are enough resources on the earth for everyone to be well off, you know, comfortable.
Definitely.
Often there's a fake or, you know, artificial scarcity to drive up the price of something. Or recently I've just heard about several inventors in the last decades have come up with ways to extract energy from the atmosphere, not from the sun, not from fossil fuels, not from the wind or the tide, but just free energy basically. And this technology then gets suppressed. It doesn't get its what's the word with P? Patent. Yeah. It doesn't get accepted. It's difficult to bring to the masses in one or another way.
Yeah.
Because they want their oil monopolies to remain intact.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. They cling and they grab onto these things that are giving them money. They stop progress. They stop because of their own greed.
It's just amazing how much potential there is and how much progress we could make, how much suffering we could alleviate.
Yeah, there's enough to go around. There's enough, you know, enough food, there's enough shelter, and there's enough like technology to provide good lives for everyone. Why hasn't that happened? Again, human nature, unfortunately. People's wants. And you know, it's so many factors. You know, we've touched on them in different episodes and whatever else. But I think those that watch this or listen to this podcast, or who will be drawn to this podcast and who are drawn to this podcast, want the same things as we do. I think that the positivity, the goodness that can come from money, if we use it in the way that is, again, abundance, as you talk about. Like, I have my own little, you know, projects that I work on that I hope will one day bring me financial, you know, benefits and sustainability. The hardest part is, and this was the point that I was trying to get to, was about belief and faith in our ability to achieve. So often, like you talked about, you want to help others gain the knowledge that you're getting, then be able to invest as well. That requires a certain amount of belief in you and trust in you as either a friend or, you know, a person that deals with you. There's a strange concept in humanity where often people that know you believe in you less because they know you, and believe more in a stranger because they don't know them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a Bible quote which is like, a prophet has no respect in his hometown or something on those lines. Mm-hmm. Because, and that's what happens with celebrities, you know, what we talked about, because people don't know them, they hero worship them and don't see, they put them on a pedestal and have this strange dynamic relationship with them where they can project themselves into that person's life as a fan or whatever and value that person lots, yet next door they could have a friend who actually is a better person, who has wiser words to say, who has more value in long term, and they won't listen to them, or they won't trust them, or they won't believe in them. And I've always been absolutely fascinated by this concept because it it's one of the things that stops us from making a difference in the world. I've seen it time and time again. Like I've seen it time and time again where, and even myself have felt it. Like somewhere in my nature, when a friend says, "Oh, I'm going to start a business," or "I'm going to do this," and in the initial thought for some reason is, "Oh, you'll never be able to do that." Just just like not because I don't love them and care for them. It's because I think that we've been manipulated in our psychology to stop each other from succeeding or working together to succeed, through putting each other down negatively, because we think it requires some magical superpower to do these things. And then my next reaction in that 0.3 of a second is to be like, "Oh no, you know what? Go for it, do it. This is awesome. Like, I'm excited. You can do this." That's my follow-up reaction, because I've trained myself to actually believe in that person, because anyone can do it. That is the truth. Anyone can achieve financial greatness, different kinds of greatness, whatever. But often it does require that belief. And it's, again, self-fulfilling prophecy almost in a positive way, where because you believe in someone, they then believe in themselves and then achieve. Or we just believe in ourselves even when no one else does, and then we achieve. That belief is so crucial. But often, as I said a few minutes ago, we don't apply it to others as well as we should. That makes sense.
Yeah. Celebrities are fake. We only get to see the chocolate side, the all the successes. Yeah, it's like a filter. It's a bias, and it's false. You have to go through a lot of. I think Steve Jobs was pretty good at being open about this. You have to experience a lot of failure before you get to success. And I was surprised when I was, when I decided I want to get rich. I got lots of books on the subject, and I was surprised to see how many of them talk about developing your character rather than methods on how stocks and money works. That's important too, but that's just a tiny part of what's important to work on and to read about compared
willpower.
to.
Yeah, it's a massive thing to keep going. Like you talked about earlier, where if something doesn't work out, the ability to then go, "Okay, cool, it's just a learning experience, move on."
Oh, right. Yeah, I was saying that I've made my mistakes along the way, in the way of losing money with cryptocurrencies, because I misunderstood how the technology works. I made some newbie mistakes, and then more recently I've made mistakes that have been costlier because I entrusted my money to someone to trade for me, for example. I almost fell for another scam where someone said he was going to help me to get my money back. I almost fell for that as well. But I caught the possibility that this could be a scam just in time to stop it.
Yeah, you
learn
it, adopting it into your character, and you adapt. Again, you don't just quit. You don't just go, "Okay, oh no, I made that mistake."
So in the moment, it was embarrassing. It was, I felt, I don't know, ashamed, guilty, just afraid that this might never pan out. I got in too deep or something. But fortunately, that didn't last too long, and I was able to come to relax and to regain control of my emotions, and then realize that the mistakes I made in the beginning look small now. When I think about how much money I lost, I could remake that money in no time now. And the money that I've worked for that I've just lost recently, maybe in 1 or 2 years' time, I'm going to laugh about that sum and think that, oh, that was just learning pains. It was fine.
Yeah, and the phrase you used was like, it was the payment for that learning experience.
Right. Yeah.
It was the cost that was required for you to then instead of losing loads and loads and loads in the future through the same mistake, you learned it now while you had that money now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'd rather go through this like life of an entrepreneur and lose a lot of money but gain even more than have a steady income as an employee. And that's a life decision that people are, well, unfortunately, they're not enough confronted with it, but people will come to this questions sometimes, and most will say, no, I like my security. I like how the government takes care of me, when in fact it just pretends to. It actually isn't all that it seems, but we can get into that another time.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of the securities that we have, like pensions, for example, are virtual, and they're not what they seem to be. And we are like children if we trust them too much. We need to take more responsibility, grow up, not just let other people take care of us, but make progress, like in our personality, in our character, in our knowledge about these things. And it might take time, it might be painful, it might take some sacrificing, it might cause ridicule, but it's worth the growth that you make.
Yeah, I agree on that.